The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been running for 14 hours, and still no solution had emerged. In the grand chamber of the Council homeworld, representatives from 47 species sat in their designated zones, some in atmosphere-controlled bubbles, others on platforms of solid light, a few existing as pure energy constrained by magnetic fields. At the center of the circular chamber, projected in holographic detail large enough for all to see, floated an image of an Ithari child. Her skin, normally a healthy blue-green, had faded to gray. Crystalline patterns that should have shimmered with life were dull and cracking. She was 6 years old and she was dying. Dr. Kelthais, the Ithari's chief medical scientist, stood before the council. His own skin showed the early stages of the Cascade Plague, faint gray patches spreading across his neck and hands. In 18 months, maybe less, he would look like the child in the projection. So would every other member of his species. The plague operates at the quantum level, Kelthais explained, his voice steady despite the tremor in his hands. It collapses the superposition states in our DNA, causing cascading cellular failure. We have tried everything within approved medical parameters. Nothing works. The mortality rate is 100%. 40 billion Ithari will be extinct within 18 months unless we act. High Chancellor Crystalline Mind of 7 Epochs, representative of the ancient Vex, refracted light through her crystalline form as she spoke. Her voice resonated like wind chimes. You have presented a theoretical cure, Dr. Kelthais. Please summarize it for the Council. Kelthais nodded. The cure requires 3 components. First, temporal manipulation technology to observe and access quantum states across multiple timeframes simultaneously. Second, quantum-level genetic rewriting to restore our DNA to its stable configuration. Third, dimensional breach technology to provide the enormous energy requirements, more than our entire civilization can generate, to deploy the cure across all 12 of our worlds at once. The chamber fell silent. Every representative knew what those 3 components had in common. Chancellor Crystalline Mind spoke the words anyway. All 3 technologies are prohibited under the Sacred Concordat. Article 7, Section 3 forbids temporal manipulation following the Chronos Wars. Article 12, Section 8 forbids quantum genetic modification. Article 19, Section 2 forbids dimensional breach technology following the reality schism. These laws were written in the ashes of civilizations that nearly destroyed our galaxy. I know the laws, Kelthais said quietly. I'm asking you to break them, to save my species. General Thrak of the Clathrin, his insectoid mandibles clicking with agitation, rose from his platform. The Concordat exists for a reason. The Chronos Wars killed trillions across 1,000 worlds. The reality schism nearly unraveled the fabric of spacetime itself. We do not break these laws, ever. Not even to prevent genocide, Kelthais asked. Not even to save 40 billion lives. The Luminari representative, a being of pure energy named Radiance Ascending, pulsed with soft light. We understand your pain, Dr. Kelthais, but the Concordat protects not just our civilizations but reality itself. To use these technologies again is to risk everything, not just the Ithari, not just the Council, everything. So you're saying we should just die? Kelthais's voice finally broke. You're saying our children should suffer and die because 10,000 years ago other species misused technology. We're saying, Chancellor Crystalline Mind replied, that we will help in every way the Concordat allows. We will provide medical support, hospice care, and assistance in evacuating those Ithari who wish to relocate to Council worlds. But we will not break the sacred Concordat, not even for this. The vote was called. One by one, the species declared their position. The Vex, no. The Clathrin, no. The Luminari, no. Down the line, 46 species refused to help. Ambassador James Okonkwo of Earth sat in humanity's designated zone, a modest platform near the back of the chamber. Humanity had been members of the Council for only 80 years, newcomers in a galaxy of ancient civilizations. He had been instructed by Earth's government to abstain from votes on matters involving Concordat law until humanity better understood galactic politics. But Okonkwo was also a father. His daughter, Emily, was 8 years old. He thought of her smile, her laugh, the way she'd run to hug him when he returned from long assignments off-world. He thought of watching her die while people who could save her chose not to because of ancient laws written by species now dust. He stood. Protocol dictated he should request recognition from the Chancellor first, but he didn't care about protocol anymore. If the Council won't help, Okonkwo said, his voice carrying across the chamber, then humanity will. The chamber erupted. Representatives turned toward the human section, their various methods of expressing shock filling the air with clicks, chimes, pulses of light, and chemical signals. Chancellor Crystalline Mind's form darkened. Ambassador Okonkwo, you do not have the floor, and surely you cannot be suggesting what you appear to be suggesting. I'm not suggesting anything, Chancellor. I'm stating a fact. Humanity will help the Ithari. We will develop the cure. We will use whatever technology is necessary. Then you will be tried under Concordat law, the Chancellor said. Article 47 is clear. Any species that violates the sacred Concordat will face tribunal. Punishments range from exile to execution of leadership to complete sterilization of all colony worlds. Okonkwo met her gaze, or where he imagined her gaze would be in her crystalline form. Then we'll face tribunal. But we won't sit here and watch 40 billion people die because you're afraid of your own history. He walked out of the chamber. Behind him, the council dissolved into chaos. 14 months. That was all the time they had. Proxima Station, humanity's most advanced research facility, orbited Proxima Centauri in a halo of solar collectors and experimental laboratories. Home to 50,000 scientists, engineers, and their families, it was the pride of human achievement, a city in space dedicated to pushing the boundaries of knowledge. When Dr. Rebecca Huang received the call from Earth, she was in her lab analyzing quantum fluctuations in exotic matter. She had won 3 Nobel Prizes and turned down positions on Earth to stay at Proxima, where the research was cutting-edge and free from bureaucratic interference. They want us to do what? She asked, certain she'd misheard. The image of Admiral Patricia Torres flickered on her screen. Develop a cure for the Ithari, using temporal manipulation, quantum genetic rewriting, and dimensional breach technology. You have 14 months. Those technologies are all forbidden by the Concordat. Yes, Earth is fully aware of the risks, both technological and political. But Ambassador Okonkwo has committed humanity to this course of action, and the government has ratified his decision. The question isn't whether we do this, Dr. Huang. The question is whether you're willing to lead the effort. Rebecca thought of her own research, her comfortable life, her reputation. Then she thought of 40 billion people dying while she did nothing. I'll need complete access to all research archives, including the classified Concordat historical files. I'll need unlimited resources, and I'll need every scientist on this station. You'll have it all. Commander David Okoro will coordinate logistics and security. Dr. Huang, I need to be clear about something. This will likely destroy Proxima Station. The technology you're developing is inherently dangerous. We're prepared for that cost. What about the scientists, the families? Everyone on Proxima is being given the choice to evacuate. Those who stay, stay knowing the risks. Rebecca closed her eyes. 50,000 people. How many would choose to stay? How many would die? I'll do it, she said. 47,000 people chose to stay. 3,000 evacuated, mostly families with young children. The rest remained, and Proxima Station transformed from a research facility into something between a laboratory and a war zone bunker. The first challenge was temporal manipulation. Rebecca assembled a team of 30 quantum physicists and set them to work analyzing the Concordat historical archives. The Chronos Wars had ended 10,000 years ago, but detailed records remained, warnings from civilizations that had learned through blood and fire what happened when you tampered with time. Dr. Marcus Webb led the temporal team. He was 53, brilliant, and haunted by the death of his wife in a shuttle accident 5 years prior. He volunteered for the project, Rebecca suspected, because he hoped that understanding time might somehow let him change what had happened. The Chronos array took shape over 3 months of 18-hour days. It was a ring of quantum processors surrounding a central chamber where temporal fields could be generated and controlled. The theory was sound. By viewing quantum states across multiple timeframes simultaneously, they could see the exact configuration the Ithari DNA needed to return to. The first test nearly killed Marcus. He stepped into the chamber, and the temporal fields activated. For 17 seconds, his consciousness existed across multiple timeframes. He experienced his birth, his childhood, his wife's death, and a dozen possible futures all at once. When they pulled him out, he was catatonic for 2 days. When he recovered, he insisted on trying again. "I saw it," he told Rebecca. "I saw how it works. We just need better shielding and more precise control." The second test was better. The third test actually worked. They successfully viewed a sample of Ithari tissue across a range of timeframes and identified the stable quantum configuration. But the psychological cost was severe. Of the 30 physicists on the temporal team, 12 suffered complete mental breakdowns. Dr. Patricia Wells, a woman who had dedicated her life to understanding the nature of time, lived through her death in 8 different timelines. She never spoke again, spending her days staring at nothing, existing in moments no one else could perceive. But they had the first component. They could see what needed to be fixed. The genetic rewriting technology fell to Dr. Yuki Tanaka and her team of nanoscale engineers. They needed to create machines smaller than viruses, capable of entering cells and rewriting DNA at the quantum level. The machines existed in theory. Making them work was something else entirely. The early prototypes failed spectacularly. Test subjects, human volunteers, because they refused to risk Ithari lives until they were certain, developed cascading cellular failures similar to the plague itself. 2 volunteers died before Yuki halted testing. "We're missing something fundamental," she told Rebecca during one of their midnight meetings in the cafeteria. Both women were exhausted, surviving on stimulants and determination. The nanomachines can rewrite DNA, but they're causing immune responses. The body recognizes them as invaders and attacks, which triggers system-wide inflammation that kills the patient. "What if we make them invisible to the immune system?" Rebecca suggested. "How? Any foreign object will trigger," Yuki stopped. "Unless we make them from the patient's own cells. Harvest cells, reprogram them into nanomachines, deploy them. The body wouldn't recognize them as foreign." It took 6 weeks to develop the technique, 8 more weeks to refine it. Testing showed a 12% failure rate on the Ithari scale that meant 4.8 billion deaths. Unacceptable. Yuki ran 10,000 simulations, tweaking parameters, adjusting configurations. Each simulation took hours. She stopped sleeping, stopped eating regular meals, stopped doing anything except work. Her team begged her to rest. She refused. On day 147, she achieved a 99.97% success rate. 12 million Ithari would still die from complications, but 37.4 billion would survive. "It's the best we can do," she told Rebecca, tears streaming down her face. "I can't get it any better. 12 million people are going to die because I can't make this perfect." Rebecca hugged her. 12 million will die. 37 billion will live. You did that, Yuki. You saved them. The final component was the most dangerous. Commander David Okoro oversaw the construction of the dimensional tap, a device that would tear holes in reality to draw power from parallel dimensions. The physics were theoretically sound. The practical applications had caused the reality schism 10,000 years ago, when an ancient civilization accidentally merged 3 dimensions and destroyed 100 worlds before the breach could be sealed. David was 42, former military, with a calm demeanor that hid the constant calculations running through his mind. He had overseen the evacuation of 3,000 people from Proxima Station without a single complaint, without a single moment of hesitation. Now he was building a weapon of mass destruction disguised as a power source. The first test of the dimensional tap was conducted in an isolated section of the station. David insisted on being present, despite the risks. The tap activated, and for 3 seconds it worked. Power flooded the collectors, more energy than humanity's entire Sol system generated in a year. Then spacetime itself began to tear. A rift opened, bleeding colors that shouldn't exist into normal space. Alarms screamed. The station shook. David triggered the emergency shutdown, but the rift kept growing. For 17 seconds that felt like hours, everyone on Proxima Station thought they were about to die. Then the rift collapsed. Analysis showed they'd been 3 seconds from catastrophic breach, from opening a hole between dimensions that would have consumed the entire Proxima system. "We need better containment," David told his team. His voice was steady, but his hands shook. "And we need backup systems, triple redundancy on every safety measure." The second test killed 15 people. A power surge from the dimensional breach overloaded the containment systems, and an entire laboratory section depressurized before emergency bulkheads could seal. David attended every funeral. He knew all 15 names, knew their families, knew their dreams. He went back to work the next day. The third test succeeded. The dimensional tap opened, drew power, and closed cleanly. They ran it 20 more times, then 100 times. The success rate held. With 3 weeks until the Ithari extinction deadline, they had all 3 components. Rebecca called a station-wide meeting in the central hub. "We're ready," she announced to the 47,000 people who had stayed. "The cure works, but deploying it across 12 worlds simultaneously will require everything we have. The temporal arrays will need to run continuously for 72 hours. The dimensional taps will open simultaneously on all 12 Ithari worlds. The quantum nanomachines will be deployed through atmospheric dispersal. There's a 93% chance we'll succeed. There's a 47% chance Proxima Station will suffer catastrophic damage in the process. There's a 12% chance the station will be completely destroyed." She paused, looking at the faces around her. Scientists, engineers, maintenance workers, medical staff. People who had given 14 months of their lives to this project. "If anyone wants to evacuate now, there's still time. No judgment, no questions asked. You've all already given more than anyone had the right to ask." No one left. The deployment began on schedule. 12 human ships, each carrying a dimensional tap and temporal array, positioned themselves in orbit around each Ithari world. Rebecca coordinated from Proxima Station. David managed the logistics. Marcus Webb, still haunted by temporal echoes but functional, oversaw the temporal synchronization. Yuki Tanaka verified the nanomachine deployment systems. On Earth, Ambassador Okonkwo watched from Council headquarters. The Ithari government had agreed to the cure, knowing the risks. Dr. Kelthais, now showing advanced plague symptoms, stood beside Okonkwo. "Whatever happens," Kelthais said, thank you for trying." The countdown reached 0. Across 12 worlds, temporal arrays activated simultaneously. Reality rippled as quantum states were observed across multiple timeframes. The arrays showed the stable configuration, the quantum pattern Ithari DNA needed to return to. Dimensional taps opened. Raw power from parallel dimensions flooded into containment systems. Warning alarms screamed, but the systems held. Energy beyond measure flowed through the ships, ready to be deployed. Atmospheric dispersal began. Quantum nanomachines, trillions upon trillions of them, flooded into the air of 12 worlds. They entered every building, every home, every hospital. They entered 40 billion bodies. The Ithari screamed. The nanomachines were as gentle as Yuki could make them, but rewriting DNA at the quantum level caused pain. Every Ithari felt like they were burning from the inside out. Children cried. Adults collapsed. Medical facilities overflowed with people who couldn't understand what was happening to them. On the human ships, systems began to fail. The dimensional taps were holding, but barely. Power fluctuations caused cascading failures across multiple systems. On Proxima Station, 3 of the backup generators exploded. Emergency bulkheads sealed automatically, containing the damage, but 18 people were trapped in the affected sections. Rebecca made the call. "Keep going. We're committed. If we stop now, we kill everyone." The temporal arrays ran continuously, maintaining the quantum observations that guided the nanomachines. Marcus Webb, standing in the primary observation chamber, felt his consciousness bleeding across timeframes again. He saw himself as a child. He saw his wife's death. He saw futures that would never happen. He kept working. 72 hours, that's how long the deployment would take. For 72 hours, the Ithari suffered. For 72 hours, human systems strained past their breaking points. For 72 hours, the galaxy watched and waited. Then silence. The temporal arrays shut down. The dimensional taps closed. The nanomachines completed their work and dissolved into harmless organic compounds. On 12 Ithari worlds, people slowly stood up. They looked at their skin. The gray patches were gone. The crystalline patterns shimmered with health. Parents checked their children. Medical scanners confirmed what everyone could see. The plague was gone. 40 billion Ithari lived. 12 million had died from complications, their systems too damaged, their immune responses too severe. But 37.4 billion had survived. Dr. Kelthai stood beside Ambassador Okonkwo and wept. "You did it," he said. "You actually did it." Okonkwo smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Now comes the hard part. The council tribunal convened 6 weeks later. Okonkwo, Rebecca Huang, and David Okoro were formally arrested and transported to the council homeworld. The charges were read in the Grand Chamber before all 47 member species. 3 counts of Concordat violation, Chancellor Crystalline Mind announced. Article 7, Section 3, unauthorized temporal manipulation. Article 12, Section 8, unauthorized quantum genetic modification. Article 19, Section 2, unauthorized dimensional breach. How do the defendants plead? Okonkwo stood, guilty on all counts. The chamber reacted with surprise. Most species expected humanity to argue technicalities, to claim they'd been helping the Ithari and should be exempt from punishment. "We knew the laws," Okonkwo continued. "We chose to violate them. We did it to save 40 billion lives. We'd do it again." The prosecution was led by adjudicator perfect form of law, another Vex. Her crystalline structure was flawless, optimized for logical thought. She presented the council's case methodically. Humanity knew the laws existed. They knew the historical reasons for these laws. They chose to violate them anyway. The Concordat is not a collection of suggestions. It is the foundation of galactic civilization, written in the blood of species that learn through catastrophe what happens when these technologies are misused. She displayed holographic evidence. Footage of temporal manipulation experiments, records of dimensional breaches. Technical data showing how close Proxima Station came to catastrophic failure. The Chronos Wars killed 8,700 billion sentient beings across 1,243 worlds, perfect form of law stated. The reality schism consumed 100 worlds completely, erasing them from existence across all possible timelines. These were not distant historical events. These were lessons purchased with unimaginable suffering. The Concordat exists to ensure we never repeat these mistakes. She turned to address the full council. Humanity's intentions were noble. Their execution was competent. Their results were successful. But none of that changes the fundamental truth. They broke the most sacred laws of our civilization. If we do not punish them severely, we send a message to all species that compassion justifies chaos, that good intentions permit the violation of laws designed to protect reality itself. That message will destroy us. The defense was simple. Okonkwo called only 3 witnesses. Dr. Kelthais testified first. He stood before the council, his skin now healthy and vibrant. 6 months ago, I stood here and begged you to help my species. Every one of you refused. You told me that laws were more important than lives. You told me that 40 billion Ithari should die because 10,000 years ago, other species made mistakes. Then humanity said yes. They risked everything, their reputation, their station, their lives, to save people they'd never met. And you want to punish them for it. He looked directly at Chancellor Crystalline Mind. I was here. I heard you vote. Every single one of you chose to let my species die. Don't pretend this is about protecting the galaxy. This is about protecting your precious laws, no matter who dies because of them. Rebecca Huang testified next. She was thin, exhausted, marked by 14 months of 18-hour days and impossible decisions. We took every precaution. We studied the historical records. We understood the risks. Yes, we used forbidden technology, but we controlled it. We didn't create weapons. We didn't experiment recklessly. We created a cure, deployed it successfully, and then destroyed the technology under Council supervision. We did exactly what we said we'd do, and 40 billion people are alive because of it. David Okoro's testimony was brief and devastating. 15 of my people died building the dimensional taps. 12 scientists suffered permanent psychological damage from temporal manipulation exposure. Proxima Station is barely functional. It'll take years to repair the damage. We paid for our choice in blood and sacrifice. We knew the cost. We paid it anyway. And if another species comes to us tomorrow with dying children, we'll do it again. The chamber was silent when he finished. Then Dr. Kelthais made an announcement that shocked the council. If you punish humanity's leaders, you punish the Ithari as well. We formally withdraw from the Galactic Council. We will stand with Earth, whatever judgment you pass. Humanity saved us when you wouldn't. That's not something we'll forget. The council deliberated for 3 days. The chamber was closed, the discussions private, but information leaked as it always does. The Vex pushed for harsh punishment, execution of the human leaders, sterilization of all human colonies, a message that would echo through the galaxy. The Clathrin surprisingly argued for leniency. General Thrax spoke at length about courage and strength, about respecting enemies who proved themselves warriors. The Luminari were divided, some arguing that humans had demonstrated enlightenment by choosing compassion, others claiming they'd shown dangerous arrogance. On the 3rd day, the council reconvened. Chancellor Crystalline read the verdict. On all 3 counts of Concordat violation, we find the defendants guilty. The evidence is clear and uncontested. Humanity violated the sacred Concordat knowingly and willfully. She paused. The chamber held its breath. The sentence is as follows. Humanity is expelled from the Galactic Council for a period of 100 standard years. Ambassador James Okonkwo, Dr. Rebecca Huang, and Commander David Okoro are permanently banned from all Council space. All forbidden technology developed during the Ithari cure must be destroyed under Council supervision, with verification that no copies or backups exist. Another pause. However, in recognition of the unprecedented circumstances and the successful outcome, the Council declines to impose harsher penalties. There will be no executions. No sterilization of colonies. Humanity will be permitted to maintain its existing trade relationships and territorial holdings. After 100 years, they may petition for reinstatement to the Council. Okonkwo stood. The Council has made its judgment. We accept these terms. Do you have anything to add, Ambassador? Only this, Chancellor. You've punished us for saving lives. You've exiled us for choosing compassion over compliance. History will judge which of us was right. He walked out of the chamber. Rebecca and David followed. Behind them, the Ithari delegation stood and left as well, formally withdrawing from the council they'd been part of for 3,000 years. The news spread across the galaxy in hours. Humanity exiled for saving the Ithari. The council choosing laws over lives. The Ithari abandoning their ancient seat to stand with Earth. Public opinion fractured along species lines. Some praised the council's restraint, arguing that the sentence was lighter than the crime warranted. Others saw it as proof that the council valued order above morality. Still others wondered what kind of civilization punished those who saved 40 billion lives. Earth complied with the terms. The temporal arrays were dismantled under Vex supervision. The dimensional taps were destroyed. The quantum nanomachine templates were erased from all databases. Council inspectors verified everything, searching for hidden copies or backup systems. They found none. What they couldn't search was the minds of the scientists who built the technology. Rebecca Huang remembered every equation, every design specification. Yuki Tanaka could rebuild the nanomachines from memory. Marcus Webb understood temporal mechanics better than anyone alive. You can destroy machines. You can erase databases. You can't unlearn knowledge. The Ithari formally established the Compact of Mercy with humanity, an alliance dedicated to helping species the Council wouldn't. They pooled resources, shared technology, and waited to see what would happen next. What happened next surprised even them. Other species began reaching out to Earth quietly. Species with problems the Council couldn't or wouldn't solve. The Brindar, whose colony world was dying from tectonic instability, the council said relocating millions was too expensive. The Kelvar, suffering from a genetic disorder the council deemed natural selection, the same argument used against the Ithari. The Thurim, whose homeworld was being invaded by a species with council protection. One by one they came to humanity, and one by one humanity helped them, not always with forbidden technology, sometimes just with human ingenuity, human determination, human willingness to try when others had given up. The Brindar colony was saved through aggressive terraforming. The Kelvar disorder was cured with conventional genetic therapy, difficult and time-consuming but legal. The Thurim invasion was stopped through diplomatic channels humanity still maintained outside council space. Each success brought more species to humanity's door. Each species that humanity helped was another crack in the council's moral authority. 10 years after the trial, 12 species had withdrawn from the council to join the Compact of Mercy. 20 years later, that number had grown to 28. The council remained powerful, remained wealthy, remained technologically advanced. But they'd lost something more important than power. They'd lost the galaxy's faith that they would do what was right. In his home on Earth, Ambassador James Okonkwo was 73 now, long retired from active diplomacy. His daughter Emily had followed in his footsteps, currently serving as Earth's primary liaison to the Compact of Mercy. His granddaughter Amara was 6 years old and asked too many questions. "Grandpa," Amara asked one evening as they watched the sunset over Lake Victoria, "why did the council punish you? You saved people." Okonkwo smiled. "Because they were afraid, sweetheart. They'd seen terrible things happen when people used certain kinds of technology, so they made rules saying nobody could ever use that technology again, even for good reasons." "That's stupid," Amara declared with the blunt honesty of childhood. "Maybe," Okonkwo agreed. "But they believed they were protecting everyone. Sometimes people do the wrong thing for what they think are the right reasons." His tablet chimed. A message from an unknown source, heavily encrypted. He opened it cautiously. The message was brief from a species he'd never heard of called the Veneth. "Our world is dying, the star is destabilizing. The council says evacuation is impossible, 42 billion people, no time, no resources. But we've heard stories about humanity, about what you did for the Ithari. Please, Ambassador Okonkwo, will you help us?" Okonkwo looked at his granddaughter, then at the sunset, then at the message. He thought about 40 billion Ithari alive and thriving. He thought about the price humanity had paid. He thought about the choice he'd made in that council chamber so many years ago. He began typing his response. "Tell us what you need." Across the galaxy, the Compact of Mercy mobilized. Earth, the Ithari, and 28 other species who had learned that sometimes the most important thing you can do is help when everyone else says no. They didn't know if they could save the Veneth. They didn't know what price they'd pay for trying. But they knew they would try anyway. Because that's what humanity did. That's what they'd taught the galaxy. That's why species that needed help no longer went to the Grand Council chamber with its ancient laws and careful deliberations. They went to Earth, where people still believed that 42 billion lives mattered more than rules. The Council watched this with growing alarm. High Chancellor Crystalline Mind, now in her 4th millennium of service, understood what was happening. They'd exiled humanity as a warning. Instead, they'd created martyrs. They'd punished compassion. Instead, they'd inspired a movement. In trying to protect their laws, they'd lost their moral authority. In trying to prevent another catastrophe, they'd created something potentially more dangerous, a coalition of species willing to risk everything for what they believed was right. The irony wasn't lost on her. 10,000 years ago, the Chronos Wars began because species believed their causes justified any means. Now humanity and their allies believe their compassion justified any risk. Maybe both sides were right. Maybe both were wrong. Maybe the only truth was that the hardest choices never had easy answers. One thing was certain: the galaxy had changed. Humanity had changed it, and there was no going back. In his quarters on the Ithari homeworld, Dr. Kelthais received the same message about the Veneth that Okonkwo had. He was 83 now, his saved life stretching into decades he'd never thought he'd see. He drafted a response offering Ithari resources, Ithari ships, Ithari expertise. Before sending it, he added one line: "Humanity saved us. Now we save others. That's the legacy they gave us." He sent the message and smiled. 40 billion Ithari lived because humans had been willing to pay any price. Now the Ithari would pay it forward. So would the Brindar, the Kelvar, the Thurim, and 24 other species that humanity had helped. The Council had exiled humanity for 100 years, but humanity hadn't needed Council approval to change the galaxy. They just needed to be themselves, stubborn, compassionate, willing to break rules when lives were at stake. The Venith would be saved. Somehow. Because that's what the compact did, and when they succeeded, more species would join, and more. And eventually the Council would have to face the reality they'd created. They'd punish the species that chose compassion, and the galaxy had noticed. History would judge which of them had been right, but the galaxy had already made its choice.